Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to take this moment to say thank you for listening to the Real Rescue podcast. It means a lot to me that you enjoy these stories as much as I do. Since the start of this podcast, we've had a lot of support from all over the world. It has been amazing. Now, we have companies joining our team that also want to say thank you for all that you are doing out there standing the watch. These companies are offering discounts on their products as a way to support the rescue community and those tuning into the Real Rescue podcast. Just go to therealresq.com, click on sponsors, and see these incredible offers for yourself. This episode of the Real Rescue podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Axness, because when lives are at stake and conditions are challenging, clear communication is of the utmost importance. SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. And Airwave, the Airwave Performance Mouthpiece, helping you to use breathing to your advantage. Breeze Eastern, they dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. The Axness PNG wireless ICS system can bring cutting-edge wireless intercommunication system technology to any aircraft. The PNG system can be fully integrated into an existing ICS system or can be carried on and off as a mobile base station. They can go anywhere at any time on any aircraft. Plus, with the strongest and most robust waterproof handheld in the market, this system can take a hit and keep working. Their wireless intercom systems are designed to enhance situational awareness through improved communication capability. This system brings superior noise-canceling technology to eliminate rotor wash and engine noise from your ICS. The Axness PNG wireless system is currently deployed in more than 1,800 public safety, air ambulance, and search and rescue aircrafts worldwide. I have personally used the Axness system in 4 different countries and on 5 different airframes. It is awesome. If you want more information, contact them today at axness.com. That's AXNES.com. You just make sure you tell them Quinny sent me. SR3 ResQ Concepts is a training company that can help your helicopter training. They train daytime, nighttime, aerial firefighting, hoist, long line, fast rope, rappel, and more. They can assist your program with standardization and safety checks or just an FAA annual refresher. With the certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew, they are ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. Plus, right now, SR3 is offering 10% off anything in their web store with the promo code, all capital letters, Real Rescue, REALRESQ. Plus, they are offering another 10% from their partners Petzl and their equipment. All you got to do is send an email to info@sr3rescueconcepts.com, mention this podcast, and they'll take care of the rest. And Airwave. What if I told you that you could train harder for longer and recover faster just by wearing a mouthpiece? I know, I questioned it too. Then I gave it a try. The Airwave Performance Mouthpiece is a breakthrough in performance technology that is scientifically proven with over 15 years of peer-reviewed, published research at the Citadel to open your airway by 25% for improved breathing, resulting in a 20% decrease in respiratory rate, an increase in muscular endurance, and 50% reduction in cortisol levels post-workout. Now, what does this mean to me? Well, now I'm able to train harder, recover faster, and be even more prepared for when that SAR alarm goes off. You don't need to take my word for it. Try it yourself and see how you can use your breathing to your advantage. Go to airwave.com or visit them on Instagram @airwave to learn more about it. Then, when you're ready to give it a try, Because you heard about it here at The Real Rescue, you get 10% off with the promotion code REALRESQ, REALRESQ. I had the opportunity to meet our next guest at the Eurosa 2022 meeting in Portugal. He put on an amazing presentation while we were there. And in our side conversations, I asked him if he would be willing to come on and tell us here on the podcast all about it. I'm totally pumped that he was willing to do that. In addition, he added a couple rescue stories of his own. So please welcome our next guest, Dr. Ben Meadley. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real Rescue Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real Rescue. Yes, another episode with a brother from down under. You know how much I love saying that, just so you know. Come on, Ben. That's funny. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ben, actually, let me go like properly here. Dr. Ben Meadley. What's up, Doc?
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Jason. Really appreciate it. It's great to be here. Long-time listener.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I appreciate that. You and I actually, it's kind of cool because we've talked quite a bit. And then we were at the Eurosa meeting up in Portugal, which is a great time. You had a great speech up there. We got talking even more. I was like, dude, you got to come on and tell some of this stuff. So after
the long walks back from the venue back to the hotel.
Mostly
it was great.
Staggering.
There's a bit of that. Well, there was some broken bones too, wasn't there?
It might have been, slipping and falling on that. No. Yeah. We won't totally call them out, but I love it. Well, Ben, like I said, man, thanks for being willing to come on and share some of the stories and some of the research and stuff that you've been doing. But before I get into that, little background. Like how did you get into search and rescue, being a paramedic, all the way to doctor at that? By the way, congratulations. That's freaking amazing. And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How'd it work?
Yeah. So I've been a paramedic for 25 years, and in our service, search and rescue almost entirely is done by the civilian sector. So search and rescue from a military point of view is usually targeted to the military. So for helicopter search and rescue, that is done mainly by ambulance services in Australia. So we have a bit of a different model where our ambulance services are state-run. So the state I live in, which is a population of about 7 million people on the southern aspect of Australia, we have a statewide ambulance service, just the one ambulance service, and that ambulance service is responsible for all kinds of response, and that includes helicopter response. So we have 5139s across the state, and we have multi-role HEMS effectively, so HEMSAR. So we do roadside rescues, roadside car accidents. That's our big bread and butter work. The intermediate work that we do is critical care transfers from regional healthcare facilities, and then the rest of the work is SAR. So we do land and water SAR, and so we're cross-trained across all of those capabilities, which is the medical, the search and rescue, as well as some other bits and pieces there as well. So we have I started out, I guess, when I was in the late 90s as a paramedic. It was always a goal of mine to become a helicopter paramedic, but within our service, because we do so much of the medical, you have to have about a decade in before you're really eligible to look.
It's a long time.
Career paths. Yeah, so not too many people would do it under that. You go from a generalist paramedic to become then what we call a specialist paramedic, or intensive care or critical care paramedic. And probably do each of those for 4 or 5 years each before you're really kind of poised to go and work by yourself. So you work as a single clinician on the aircraft, and you're the rescue crew officer as well. So you go out and do all your training to consolidate all of those areas. But most of our people don't come from a SAR background before they go to the helicopter, and that's when you go to the helicopter, that's where you learn your SAR work
Wow.
and in my service. It's a real bonus. It's a great career option for us to have that ability to extend beyond the medical and do the SAR work, but it also means that when we do the SAR work, we can bring the medical component to it. So I think it's a good system, and yeah, we think it meets the needs of most of our community. We do have some other SAR capable aircraft for the police in the state as well. So for the uninjured people, we can use them, and they do a lot of those. In the unfortunate incidents of body recoveries, those types of things where there's no medical need, then they'll go and do that type of stuff, or someone who's clearly just stuck somewhere. But yeah, for me, it's been it was about a 10 plus year journey to get there, and I've been there for the last nearly 15 years of doing that job and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's how our service is set up, and I kind of have structured my whole career to get there, and then I now work at one of our country or regional bases outside of the major metropolitan area, which is a great place because it's near the wilderness, it's near the coastline, and we get a great mix of medical and SAR work.
Dang, that's great. What state are you in right now? Like, or town, or
Victoria is the name of the state, and the capital city is Melbourne, which is where I am currently.
That's right. Yeah. I need to come out and hang out with all you guys down there.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's on my
We'd
list.
love to have you anytime you're ready.
Oh, my problem is I might show up and then never leave, and then the government will be after me, and then it gets weird,
Yeah. No, we'll hide you. We'll hide you, and they'll never find you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I like that. It's funny.
Good job,
Hey, thanks. It's listening to how you guys go through it. Like, you get into your medicine first. Road ambulance is where it starts. Then you go back to school for critical care or the equivalent, and then get into your helicopter stuff. And for me, growing up, or as in my career, was the exact opposite.
Interesting.
So
isn't
for
it?
us,
It's interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's interesting because it's a young person's game. I think the SAR component, because you're at your physical prime, and you can tolerate the shift work really well. And ironically, with our model, we don't see many people under 32, 33 before they start in the SAR role. So it's a pretty, there's a couple of exceptions, but we've got the majority of our workforce is well into their 40s. Because they, of course, once you get to the job, you don't leave because it's so good. It just took you a decade to work out to get there. So and it's interesting because you look at I guess the other way around, and someone like yourself, you go into the US Coast Guard as a young thruster, as they would say, and you're prime when you're doing all that SAR work. And it was interesting to listen to the story of that case officer story in one of your previous episodes about the young crew. You got the older, more experienced pilots, and then you got the young, brand new rescue swimmer, and a couple of old flight mechs as well. So it's an interesting mix, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, very much so. It for me, it was a blast. I mean, I loved it. But it's interesting to think about it, because I will say, like other guys have come on here and talked about it. It's like, hey, work on your medical stuff as much as you do your SAR stuff. But as a young, adrenaline pumping young buck,
down the list of priorities.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, I just want to get in the water. I just want to get on scene. And you're like, So to have an opposite, I mean, whatever. However you get there, I don't care. And as long as you get there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And and I guess there's some of that stuff. It's a balance, isn't it? About mindset. You look back to your 20s and think about some of the decisions you might have made, and maybe revisit some of them if you had the chance again. But I don't know whether you necessarily come with a clearer head, later down your path for the SAR work per se. I don't know, but there's no right, wrong answer. It's just a different system, and I think that we have, because of the proportion of our work for the SAR staff is lesser than the medical, and we're trying to get best bang for your buck, if you like, out of the system by having that multi-role capability. There's always trade-offs, isn't there? About having one versus the other. So do you want a full-time dedicated SAR service within our state, given our population and the area. We just don't have the workload to justify that. And so combining it with the medical response means that you get the best value for what is a really expensive service. As you know, nothing that starts with helicopter is cheap.
Yeah, that's right. Heck, what is it? Just the hoist pendant is like $20,000, and I don't think I'm exaggerating with that either.
No. When it's funny when you speak to family and friends who aren't in the business about bits and pieces of cost, and they go, "Oh yeah, no, there he goes exaggerating again." You're like, "Well, you know, $100,000 rotor blade is probably not far from the truth." Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's not. It's crazy to think about. Like I said, just the hoist pendant.
Yeah, that's
you know. I really think it's like 20 grand. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's expensive business. You know, you got a half $500,000 engine sitting somewhere spare just in case. So yeah, it's an expensive game. So I guess for us, providing the best bang for your buck to the community, because it's a it is 100% funded by the taxpayer. So we've got to give the community the best service we can for what they contribute.
No, I think that's great. Now you're a guy. Oh, what do you call it? A winchman, rescue swimmer. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, rescue RCO, or rescue crew officer, I think is what the term is given. But yeah, the actual term of the profession is a mobile intensive care ambulance. So MICA flight paramedic is the term, but that encapsulates multi-role, which is the medical and the rescue crew officer role as well. So we have a crew of 3 in our aircraft. So pilot, the aircrew officer, and then the paramedic who's in the back. And our aircrew officer is the winch operator, and they are multi-role. In fact, they're the busiest. Our aircrew officers who often come from other SAR agencies or the military, that's where they get their kind of collective experience before they come to us. We've got kind of minimum hour requirements before they would come to us, and they are the busiest people in the aircraft. So they are front left seat on the way to a job, and then if it's a winch or a hoist job, they would crawl through the center console of the 139 and jump in the back and then start operating the hoist, and then down I go, or down the paramedic goes. And then if that's a medical job, and when we bring the patient up and the door's closed and they're disconnected and secured, they're on the tools, the medical tools. So they cross-train as a medical assistant as well. Wow. So they'll be drawing up medications and getting IVs ready and turning ventilators on and all kinds of stuff. So the aircrew officer job is a really busy job. So our friend Ben Darlington, that's him. That's
shout out to Ben.
The job. We love him. It's in the name, of course. Yeah. But it's so they're super busy. It's a great little team of 3 people. It's a really interesting thing. So we still run single pilot on the 139.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a unique side of things with that. But that might be another conversation for a whole nother time too. That's a big aircraft that you're flying single pilot. So,
absolutely. Yeah. So it's lots of stuff. And so, if we're doing confined entry landings, etc., then the aircrew officer comes into the back. They'll be right door. The paramedic will be on the left door, clearing into confined areas and helping out the pilot as best we can. So it's a lot going on for that small team of 3.
I'm just thinking about like Ben or Sam or one of those guys, because they're not little dudes. They're kind of they're tall. Sam's a little wide. He's about my size, like maybe a little bit bigger than me, and like crawling from the front left over the console in the back. All right, let's go. Let's get hoisted.
That's it. Gonna be a gymnast.
Oh, that's awesome. Right on. All right. Now, out of curiosity, I'm going to go a step further and ask you, what brought you all the way to get your certification as being a doctor? And is the doctor the same doctor that I'm thinking about, like medical doctor, like ER doc?
No.
Okay.
No. PhD. So pretend doctor.
Perfect.
Yeah. You can make an argument one way or the other.
So you have your doctoral, which is hard to get, by the way, because I don't have mine. I'm just going to throw that out there for you, okay?
Well, it's never too late. I didn't start mine until I was 40, so it was
Noted.
yeah. So it's an academic qualification, not a medical one. I think I've got enough medical stuff to keep me ticking along. So that was more about that. A PhD really just qualifies you to be a researcher. That's what that's about, and kind of build yourself as a subject matter expert. But it is hard work. It's a lot of hard work, but really, really rewarding. But effectively, what happened was, you go out for at that time of my career, I'd been flying for 10 years, and you just end up asking questions. So you go out and do some rescues, you go out and do some medical work, you go out and fly around and do some SAR work or whatever it is, and you go, okay, can we do this better? Are we doing it to the best standard that we possibly can? What are other people doing? It's really important to not kind of live in your own silo of, just because we think we're the best. That's probably not the case. There's probably people doing it as well, if not better. What can we learn from them? And
if you want to know who the best is, if you really want to know who the best is, ask that agency at that moment in time. That's it.
Love it.
If you just want to know,
that's it.
They'll just tell you.
Simple equation. That's it. That's it. It's it's the Mutual Appreciation Society, isn't it? Everyone's pretty happy with their own little group. So, but I went out and did lots of work. I've had one of those careers where I've been lucky. I've got out to go and do a lot of great jobs over the years, and you always come back. I think the way you become an expert at something is to always ask the question of whether you could have done it better. And I think you've spoken to heaps of people in your career, and certainly in your podcast, which is great to hear, where people tell their stories, but the definition in my mind of an expert is somebody who reflects immediately about how they could have done that better. And I guess what led me to research around this area was thinking more about that, not just in the instant of each individual job, but more of a system. How can we do the system better? How can we do it overall better rather than just, job by job? So I guess that's where I landed after going out and doing it myself. So I'm really fortunate, because most academics don't necessarily go and do the job that they research. I was so lucky that I had the career that I had. And then I had the time and the support from my own family to then go and pursue this research, which is quite time consuming, but I had great support from the profession, great support from my colleagues and managers to start looking at what it is we do. But it's all based off real rescues. How'd you like that? There, I dropped the name.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you. That's good. We're actually going to talk about this a little bit more because I want to hear more about your studies and stuff. And this also correlates and ties into the presentation that you brought to Eurosa. So we have an opportunity to really bring your presentation to everybody else in the world that wasn't at Eurosa. So bonus there. But buddy,
Absolutely.
I got to ask, your very first rescue,
Yeah. Of course, I had to make sure I had a couple of stories ready, didn't I? Otherwise, I'm not meeting the requirement of the actual name of the podcast.
Whatever.
I think that
I just wanted you to come on anyway. Come on, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'll give you 3 stories. I appreciate having me here, even if my stories aren't as spectacular as some of your others. But the first one, which will come back to the research, is I got inserted out in the high country in Victoria, the state I live in, which is it's pretty rugged. Like we have, from an aviation point of view, we have 3 what we call designated remote areas in Australia, big areas where you're required to carry minimum fuel requirements, minimum SAR equipment requirements, minimum survival equipment, because it's that, the definition, if you like, of this type of countryside is if you crash there, we're just not going to find you. So you kind of just going to have to stick it out. So there's 3 big areas in Australia. One's kind of in the centre of Australia. One's on the west coast of Tasmania, which is the island to the south of Australia, which is this really, really remote and rugged wilderness. And then the area that my helicopter base services is the other area, which is called the Victorian High Country. And it's often when you're flying over there, you're like, they're just not going to find us if we go down here. So, of course, it's not going to happen because we've got an awesome team and awesome aircraft. But that's it. We got sent out to we call Saturday afternoon in my surface motorbike Saturday, because almost certainly the jobs that we're going to go out to are probably related to some kind of petrol powered object, usually a trail bike, motocross type bike. So we'd gone out and
something that has super fun adrenaline and goes really fast and doesn't always
surprisingly,
stop.
That's it. And surprisingly has a male aged 18 to 45 on it. So that's usually our demographic. Yeah, that's it. So sure enough, that's exactly who we're going out to, someone who's broken. And because I was so junior, we hadn't done a heap of SAR training exercises as part of our initial accreditation, more just hoist technique, learning how to work with the aircraft and be hoisted in and out, and all of the bits and pieces about getting a stretcher in the door. And at the time, it was a 412. With great, fantastic aircraft, very capable for what we were doing at the time. But I didn't really understand much about all of the flight rules about getting close to a scene. It was still kind of finding what the hell all of that meant to me. So if pilots did something, I was kind of just trying to understand why they couldn't get me closer, or why I was so close sometimes. Sometimes it's about being like, oh, wow, we're right down in this valley or whatever it is. We've got, 250 foot of cable. Why we're right down in this valley, skimming the treetops. So it's a good example of just letting the experts do their job. But in this particular case, I got put down at the bottom of a really, really steep, rocky, uneven trail. And I was about probably 800 meters. So I don't know what that's half a mile from the patient. And it was almost vertical to get up to this person, which is why they'd come unstuck. And I had all my equipment, and because you're a solo rescue crew officer in these circumstances, you put down by yourself. And I've got to carry, the medical kit. I've got to carry the stretcher, the collapsed stretcher, which I think at the time was the Furno kind of collapsible orange plastic stretcher, and then walk up the hill with all this 40 kilos of gear to get to this patient. And so
holy shit,
and you get there and he's pretty sick, a couple of broken legs, and so you've then got to get up there, and I'm spent from the walk of 800 meters straight up a almost it's not vertical, of course, but a very, very steep, unsteady incline. But then you've got to deliver medical care to someone who's actually quite injured, and then get them packaged up. And then we've got, by virtue of the fact that I couldn't be winched directly to him in the first place, that answers the question about whether you can winch them out or not. So that wasn't the end. I've then got to recruit a couple of his motorcycle riding buddies to get him relocated to another location. So the thing I remember about that first rescue was we were in the middle of nowhere in very remote countryside, immense physical effort, which was fine, but then having to make clinical decisions at the end of the job, and then a 200-foot winch with stretcher, accompanied stretcher winch, and then and managing the tagline, through tall timber and trees and getting back up to the aircraft. So I just remember the whole package of that job, even though in isolation, going for a walk with some heavy equipment, that's something I can do, no worries. Managing someone to give them some fentanyl or morphine and put an IV in or whatever for their broken legs and splint their limbs, and maybe give them some fluid and monitor their blood pressure, etc. I can do that in isolation. Relocating the patient from where they were in the stretcher with some friends up to a place to be extricated from, all of those things in isolation are fine. Put them all together, that's a really hard job. And it was quite, I think, a bit of an awakening as to how complex some of these cases can be. And then, the first time you spend, 200-foot winch with, yourself, with my gear at the time, I would have been 85, 90 kilos, plus, the patient and my gear, you're pushing the max limits of the hoist. So that, of course, the winch speed is at its slowest. So you spend a lot of time in fresh air with at a height above the the forest floor, and you're like, looking around, going, yeah, this is a cool job, but I wouldn't mind being inside the aircraft right about now. So anytime you're ready to get me up to the door, that'd be really great. And making sure that the tagline's punched off and getting everything right. So I wouldn't have said it went perfectly, but that was the first big rescue that I did. And I just remember thinking at the end of it, there's a lot of moving parts to those jobs, to make sure you do them well, do them safely, make sure you're still looking after the patient, make sure you're looking after yourself as well. But it then goes back to the big systems thing, is like, was I prepared to do that job? And in that instance, yeah, I think I probably was at the time, but I was physically prepared to do the job. But the logistics and the complexity of the job was a real kind of learning thing from that job.
Dang. Anything you would have done different after you got back? Or if you had the same case now?
Yeah, I probably would have walked a bit slower, because, the adrenaline's pumping, you've been put down, and you got to ask the question, how sick's the patient? Don't really have a whole lot of information a lot of the time. Up in those parts of Australia, there's not a whole lot of great communications, no mobile phone reception, that type of stuff. So a lot of the time you kind of max yourself out to get to the patient to make sure that you can deliver the care. And you know now that he probably was going to be fine for another couple of minutes. So probably just saving a few, as we would say, save your bickies in Australia. Save your bickies. Spend all of yeah.
I love it.
Don't burn all your matches too quickly. So yeah. So I think I probably should have just chilled out a little bit and taken my time. But we got there in the end. And I think there was some. It was the first time we'd flown together as a crew. That particular crew. It was a new contractor onto our service as well, and it would have been the first kind of big job, or big SAR job for that crew. I was a junior paramedic. We had a fairly junior hoist operator, a very, very experienced pilot, but one that was new to the operation. So a couple of good learning things, but we really do make sure we do formal debrief with all those cases to make sure we sit down and take away the lessons. But yeah, there was a couple of lessons there, and I think the things differently again. For the most part, we got the job done. So just maybe slow down. It's good advice from more senior, experienced people that young people generally don't take.
Yeah, I'm on board. Like, hey, slow down, man. And I was the same guy that was going balls to the wall just a couple of years ago. Even now, I'm like, yeah, let's go. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Take your minute.
That's it.
Dude, nice. Good save. I like that.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
All right, you said 3, so I'm ready for number 2.
And I guess the next one, which is a bit of the next one's more of a comedy than a real epic job, but we had a big construction project going down, building a desalination plant in the south of our state a number of years ago, and there might have been some loose hands of some of the employees with regards to some of the gear from that construction site, and we got this call for some guy down near this desalination plant, which of course is on the coast, because that's obviously where they get the water from. And there's some pretty decent cliff faces not far from where they were, and sure enough, one of the guys who's a rigger at this construction site, so he's got all the ropes and the harnesses, he's the safety guy. He decides that when he's knocked off from work one day, he's going to just randomly go abseiling down one of these cliffs. But he's still in his employer's uniform, and he's just gone down and gone, oh yeah, no, just finished work, go for an abseil, see what happens. And he's thrown the ropes that were probably the company's ropes over, tied them to a log somewhere, thrown them over, put his work harness on, but he's not checked how far those ropes go down the cliff, and he's got 30 meters, so I don't know how many feet that is, you'll have to do the conversion, but 90, 30 meters, long way,
give or take, 90
down feet. Yeah, 90 foot, that sounds about right. Yep. So he's got that far down the cliff face, and realized he's still got another 40 meters to the bottom. He's at the end of the ropes, and he has no ascending device. So so yeah, we got tasked. He still had his mobile phone with him, had reception, and he's just like, well, I don't. He called his wife and said, I don't know what to do, and she said, well, I can't help you, mate. I'm not sure what you expect me to do. So we went down there, and some of these things you just don't train for. We don't do a lot of the other states in Australia. The HEMSA paramedics training, advanced roping techniques, and in this situation, we have to do some anchoring and a whole range of other stuff. We really solve a lot of these problems through hoisting. So we went down there and we found him, really quickly because he's wearing his high visibility work uniform. He wasn't hard to find. And there he is, can't go up, can't go down. And it was almost like a weird comedy TV show where I kind of get hoisted down to him. And it was a decent hoist, the aircraft was a long way up, so we had the ability to speak to each other pretty easily. And it was almost like someone out of the Muppets. So I get lowered down to this guy just to have a conversation and going, "What the hell are you doing, mate?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's just sorry about that, and just didn't really check the ropes. Sorry." And so I put the strap around him and said, "I'm gonna have to cut the ropes, mate, because we're out of here." Pulled out the Spyderco knife and sliced the ropes and dropped him up at the top of the car park, and his wife picked him up and went home. So it wasn't much of a spectacular rest. It was a beautiful cliffside, but it was a bit of a weird job. You don't come to work expecting those kind of jobs. Some days everything's a bit interesting, eh?
Oh, that's hilarious. Hey, man, what are you doing? Not really sure. Sorry, I had to call you out here. I'm stuck.
That's it. Well, I guess that's what we do for a job. So here we are.
Oh,
but
man.
So that was pretty cool. And I guess the last story was the one. I've got a couple of other decent water stories, but I'll go with a inland water story. We got sent out to a river in the same remote area that I spoke about earlier. And this was the first time I'd started working at this regional base. It was one of my first shifts there, and pick up a SAR job at 7:02 in the morning, 2 minutes after logging on for the day, and head out to the river. And it was the first time I really hadn't really rationalized what the aircraft was doing. This particular pilot was just a maestro. The aircraft was an extension of his fingers. He was just so impressive. Pleasure to fly with. And the crewman, as in the hoist operator, had probably more experience than the pilot. So this super experienced crew, they've been doing this remote star stuff for 30 years. And I was just this kind of this newbie, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And we've been told that there's 7 people we need to hoist out of this river.
Oh, sick.
And I'm like, oh, okay, righto, no worries. And it's an hour flight. So we go up and we come down, and I'm just kind of assuming this river obviously is at the bottom of a valley between 2 very large, big kind of regional mountains. We've got mountains in Australia, but they're not really by international standards, but they're big enough. They're 2,000 meters or so. So big mountains in our country. So yeah, but for me at the time, the realization of they just got so far down into the valley, I kind of just assumed that they would run the length of the cable to insert me, but they got right down onto the river and right down into obviously away from the survivors to make sure we weren't going to injure them. But it was just this incredible learning experience to watch these 2 super experienced people, collectively 60 years of doing this stuff in really remote terrain. And it was just listen and learn. And you ask all the questions later. You're like, oh, I didn't really realize. But anyway, we get down there. There's 2 kayakers who've injured themselves pretty nicely going down a waterfall, and they've got broken bones all over the joint. So we've got to get them up to the aircraft. But a ground party had gone in and overnighted with them, and so they were the other 5. They're all fed. They'd started a campfire. They've all eaten. A couple of paramedics, a couple of police officers, and a search and rescue specialist. And they've gone in there. They're all cool. They're in full Gore-Tex and Polartec. They're good as gold. These other guys are still in their wetsuit from kayaking, and so the 2 were quite injured. And we go, no worries, we'll get those guys out. And then the other 5 just wanted a ride home. And I'm like, it was, again, for me as a junior, I'm like, I don't really know. Is this what we do? Do we hoist another 5 people up to the aircraft to give them a ride home because they don't want to walk out? And the weather was good and all the rest of it. So it was a good learning experience for me. And I said, look, I think you're actually able-bodied. You enjoy your walk. I'll catch you later. So so we sent them on their way, much to their disappointment, and it was only always the 2 in the end. But it's it was just that phase of my career where I learned so much from people who've been doing it before, and it was all this stuff that was a revelation to me that was new, and just remember lapping up all this information from just learning how to do jobs well, doing how to do them safely and to the best of your ability. And sometimes it's just in awe of watching people who are experts at their job.
Bro, that's awesome. Oh, get 2 guys that are all jacked up. Hey, can we take a ride? Yeah, no, you can't.
No,
sorry.
No.
Enjoy your walk.
You can't just kind of. You can't draw a little pros and cons or risk analysis in the dirt for them and go, look, here's the risk of hoisting another 5 people into that 412, and here's the risk of you walking out of here. So just send them on their way.
Oh, that's great. Man, I love it. I love the stories, man. Thank you for sharing those.
No worries.
So one of the things I do need to recognize you for, and for everybody else out there, is recently, and when I say recently, as of January of this year, you earned yourself, along with a couple other people, the Ambulance Service Medal. Recognizes distinguished service as a member of an Australian ambulance service. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a great honor. Very, very, very humbled by the award.
Oh, it's amazing. And I don't actually have how many people were on the list to get it. And is it per state, or do you even know?
Yeah, so they give about 5 or 6 per state per year. Yeah.
That's so. What is there? There's not many states in Australia. There's 6 off the top of my head. Is that right? 6, 7? We have 7 overall, including a couple of territories. But so there's about 15,000 paramedics in Australia. So it was nice to get the award. Yeah. So well done, sir. I mean, that's fantastic. And as a matter of fact, it says,
Thanks,
yeah, you're welcome. You're very welcome. In an article, the Sentinel Times covering the South Gippsland and Bass Coast, the newspaper article here has you, beautiful picture of you. And it comes down and just says, it is recognition of this, that he was named among the illustrious group to receive the national recognition on Australia Day, which, convenient enough, as you just told me a little while ago, is your version of the Independence Day for America. So freaking awesome, man.
Something similar.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Much
you're welcome. Heck yeah. So this all came from everything that you've been doing. You said 26 years of being a paramedic, all your research, right? All of that combined is what earned you this award. Yeah.
And I think I've been lucky to do a lot of clinical research as well around some of the things we do for our medical jobs. But the last number of years has really been centered around how we can look after our flight paramedics doing the HEMSAR role better and give them a long career, get them prepared for their jobs, identify the things that make you good at your job, specifically around the physical stuff as well, so that we can really, especially because of the type of workforce that we've got, where they're, like I said earlier, they aren't a young workforce by comparison, and so making sure we keep people well and prepared throughout their career is really important. That became really important to me. So I've been lucky to do a lot of different things in the ambulance service over the years and in research. So this is kind of I'm again humbled by the recognition.
Love it. And again, it's well deserved. This is the same research that you had done and you gave the presentation at Eurosa. So it is literally the studies of physiological to keep us physically fit. Demands. Right. There you go. Better word. Thanks, Ben. But the physical demands that we go through as rescuemen on the hook, down on the ground, flying and everything, like we could bring it back to the very first rescue that you talked about, being hoisted in, having to hike 800 meters up, then having to relocate a patient, let's call them 100 kilos for round numbers, you and two other dudes. And now you got to hoist them out, and you have to treat them in the back of the helicopter all the way back to or an ambulance or a hospital.
Yep.
So,
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So that's exactly, that it's funny because I hadn't really thought about that particular job that I mentioned earlier in a while. And I guess it's probably just sat at the back of my mind a lot of the time, being a really hard job. So when I did that actual job, I spoke to a couple of the managers at the base that I worked at and the service that I worked at, and going, hey, do you reckon that the physical standards that we ask people to meet, do you reckon they match the job that we actually ask people to do? So my undergraduate university degree, my bachelor's degree, is in exercise science. So I'd always had, and I took my career, took a right hand turn into paramedicine, which is another story for another day. But I always still maintained an interest in sports science and my own physical well-being and my own sporting pursuits and stuff. Always interested in human performance across all factors. But I wanted to have a bit of a look at the standards that we were set and whether or not they matched the job and whether we were doing the right thing by our staff. And we did a little tweak with some work, I guess, just with my undergraduate knowledge. Did a bit of tweaking to the process, which was really kind of served us quite well. But then as time went on, I really wanted to dig into it a little bit deeper, which is how I ended up doing the research. And again, the organization really supported me to do that. And I found out once I enrolled in my doctorate that there's actually a full science dedicated, and that is called the Science of Physical Employment Standards. So that then links to a process that you need to follow to actually say, okay, if we're going to examine someone or we're going to set a standard, but more importantly, if we're going to make sure we can prepare our staff well so that they can actually go do their job and minimize injury and have a long career and meet the service we say we're going to provide, there's actually a process to follow to do that that's scientifically validated. So
that's cool.
Physical,
I didn't know that.
So that physical, neither did I until I heard it from one of the experts. And that basically meant I had a template to follow for my research. And so that's what I really did. And it had never been done in helicopter rescue paramedics before. So that's where my project took off, and I was able to say, okay, well, we're going to follow this process for our group of paramedics. And we've only got 40 or so staff in our service. And so I was able to lean on a few well-established relationships to ask people to participate in my studies. And we went about basically going out and answering all the questions that had to be answered to build a scientific process behind the requirements to do our job. And it reveals a lot of information about how strenuous it actually is, and specifically quantifying or actually putting numbers to how hard the job can be. In like that case I spoke about earlier, what's your heart rate doing? What's your breathing rate doing? How much oxygen are you using? How many calories you're burning? What kind of recovery time do you need? What kind of preparation do you need, both in the short and long term, to be able to do that job safely? And so I was really fortunate to get that work done and published in and for academics, it's important to get it published in like a high reputation journal. That's what you're aiming for. So we've got our work put out there and been really lucky that a lot of that work's been picked up by a lot of other services as well. I get a lot of calls about the research to help other services use that as a guide as well.
Man, that's good stuff. Question: what was the standard that you guys started out with? So I'm assuming like push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, maybe a run, maybe a swim, something like that. So what was it when you first started?
So when we first started, we had so the ambulance service for all paramedics does a kind of generic medical / physical entry.
All paramedics, test. Ground all paramedics, as well.
Yep.
Brilliant.
So all 5,000 paramedics.
Love it.
There you go.
Just so you know.
So they've got it. There you go. It's noted for history. So we were really lucky to have that standard, I guess, as a reference point. And it was, I think, I could be wrong, but the general paramedics would have to get a score of 14 out of 24 to pass that test, I think. And that involved a submaximal test, which is a aerobic fitness test. They call that a VO2 max test, and so it's a test where you're not actually going to your maximum effort, but you do a sub-maximal effort, and then you predict your maximum performance. Do one of those, just an exercise bike test. There's a whole bunch of different versions of that. You know, the beat test or the shuttle run test is another version of a test like that. Sit-ups and push-ups, like you say, as well. A couple of other strength-based assessments is what's done for the general paramedics. And then for the flight paramedic selection process, they then ask you to do the same test, but you've got to get like 21 out of 24, so to a higher standard. You've got to pass that test. And then there was, an aviation medical that would be the same as what a pilot or a non-flying aircrew officer would have as well.
So the pilots had to do this.
No, the pilots do their own aviation medical.
I was all excited about that. Like, let's go, you guys up front. We got PT day. Let's go.
Yeah, love it. No, the pilots have got to meet like a general medical physical. So you got to do where you make sure you're not going to have a heart attack when you're flying, that type of stuff. So you've got to do the same one of those. And then there was a swim test, which was it's a pretty standardized test across Australia, actually, and that involves an underwater swim in overalls and boots. You kick off the boots, then you swim for 200 meters in your overalls, flight suit, and then you tread water for 10 minutes. Pretty standard test done in a lot of services.
Okay.
And then there was, and that was it really. I think when I went through, there might have been one other thing, but when we revisited it, we amped that up a bit. So we doubled the length of the swim, and then we introduced a dedicated pack hike as well, timed pack hike with the equivalent of the operational gear, just to put people under a little bit of pressure, and a little bit of almost replicating that job I spoke about earlier, where you ask somebody to push towards a patient and feel like they're under strain. So we did that, and then that was the standard at the moment. But it hadn't really. You could still call it arbitrary because it's not really based on any scientific process. So we thought when we got to the big research project, we need to follow the process and answer the questions.
And what did you come up with?
That's a good question. I was waiting for it. So what we, in a quick summary, we went and put people into the sports lab, and we got them on a treadmill, and we did a proper VO2 max test. So we found out what their maximum capacity was when they were running. Then we basically invented a test in the pool where we sampled blood, we sampled their expired gases, we sampled their heart rate, we measured their gas on a gas analyzer, which tells us how much oxygen they use, how much CO2 they use, how much CO2 they breathed out. It's pretty decently scientific stuff. A bit nervous about having all that equipment on the pool side, but managed to not blow it up. But we did all those pretty in-depth tests. And then what we wanted to do is see, did the running maximal test match the swimming maximal test results? And we did find that they were actually, in this group of paramedics, the same. Or similar.
Wow, nice. That's great.
So that was huge. So that was a huge benefit, because what it allowed us to do is say, testing someone's max capacity in the pool scientifically is really hard, because you've got blood tests and heart rate tests and expired oxygen tests. It's really, really logistically hard to do. There are certain machines you can buy that can help you do it, but they're super expensive and they're prone to, water damage and all kinds of stuff, funnily enough. But the test that you do on the treadmill is a bog standard test, been around for 50 years, and it's really, really accurate. So if the running test is as accurate as the swimming test, which we found it was, then just do the running test, because that'll tell you what the person's maximum capacity is. Doesn't cost much, doesn't, no danger of dropping expensive machinery in the water. And so that was the first thing that we did. We found that maximum swimming oxygen use and heart rates and stuff were the same on the treadmill, were close enough that you could say that that person met a standard. And then what we did is we designed some scenarios to see what percentage of your maximum effort do you work at when you're doing SAR cases. So we went through 4 years of SAR cases across our entire service, hundreds and hundreds of cases, and we looked at what type of work were people doing. What's the actual job people are doing? We kind of generalized the results to say that people are generally walking up steep hills with heavy packs and then moving patients. And then in the water type rescues, they're getting into the water, they're swimming to a life raft or they're swimming to a survivor, and they're generally rescuing, let's say on average, 1 or 2 people. So we built some scenarios that were exactly that. We got someone to walk up a hill with a pack and then provide patient care. And we measured their oxygen, measured their heart rate, and measured their blood. And then we did the same thing in an open water swim, 50-meter open water swim in the suit, wearing a harness attached to a winch cable. And we got him to drag a dummy out of a life raft and then back kick to a theoretical safe winch extraction point away from the life raft. And we measured their oxygen, we measured their heart rate, measured their blood. And then we basically compared those efforts in the scenarios to what we saw in the lab for their max efforts to work out how hard they were working. And the result was basically people who've been working for really extended periods of time at about 85, even up to 90% of their max effort. So that's hard.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to train for that. You've got to train for it. So we answered the question, how hard are people working? Hard. We've got a, middle-aged workforce. So we need to provide them with the tools to be successful at doing their job. We need to make sure that they meet a standard. But we can also then say when we examine people to that standard, we can justify it. So if I say go and do 20 push-ups, they go, and a paramedic might say to me, why? You go, well, I actually don't know. Seems like a good idea. Quinny told me to tell you to do 20 push-ups, so you're doing and 100 flutter kicks. So
yes,
that's what you're doing. But it's a fair question to say why. How does that relate to my job? But with this science, what we can say is, well, if I ask you to walk, we ask you as an organisation, ask you to walk up a hill with 40 kilos of gear, and it's 250 meters and it's unsteady terrain, and I need you to do it in kind of around about 5 to 7 minutes. I can justify that because we've got a whole bunch of science that tells us they're the types of jobs we expect you to do, and also we need you to work. We need you to demonstrate you can work at 85 to 90% of your capacity for 5 to 7 minutes. Because if we pay $200,000 to train you over all this time and deploy you in a $22 million aircraft to a job, I need to know that you're actually able to do the job we say we can do. And we owe that to the community as well. We owe it to the person stuck where, the guy who's stolen his ropes from work. We owe it to him to be able to get him off the cliff. I need the motorbike rider. We owe it to them to be able to do it. And we have to be able to say that our staff can do that job.
That's pretty awesome. Now, do you guys get into any body weight to ratio lifting, or like a deadlift or anything like that in your test?
At the moment, there is some manual handling based testing about being able to pick things up and being able to do things like a neck hold and move heavy objects around. So while it's not a deadlift per se, there's some kind of what we would call surrogate or proxy tests that kind of assess that capacity. But there's still quite a bit of work to be done. What we really focused on in this test was more around the cardiovascular endurance aspect. And some of that strength stuff is work that we're really keen to do in the future, because the evidence around strength-based training just continues to, you already know this, I don't need to tell you, and probably most of your audience, but the science behind it just grows and grows and grows of how good it is for you to lift heavy stuff and throw it back down again.
Pick the weight up, put the weight down.
That's it.
It's
not much more complicated than that, is it?
No, it's not. But all that base training that you're talking about is so beneficial for the long-term game. And I mean, I'm all about it. I try to train daily. it doesn't always happen. Life gets in the way from time to time.
That's
So,
it. It
but the
does.
way I look at it, and I say this to my wife all the time, you know what? It doesn't happen today. Like, she has report cards that she had to write out. My girl's a teacher. So it's report card season out here. But
That's
for
it.
her, it was like, you know what? I can't get to the gym today. So there's a workout tomorrow. She's going tomorrow, so.
That's it. And yeah, it's funny. One of the other bits of research that we did is we took junior paramedics, and then we took these same group of paramedics. This is kind of a standalone project that we did on the side, and just looked at their general lifestyle stuff. So for the general paramedics, we had 56 of them wear a Fitbit for a year, and we tracked all of their exercise data in real time. Okay. We did the same thing with a group of the flight paramedics who've been working on the helicopter for 10 years or whatever. Because one of the questions you got to ask, you go, I'll tell you the answer to the research, and because I don't have the answer to the other part. The answer to the research was that the flight paramedics did nearly double the amount of daily steps, more than 4 times the amount of high intensity exercise than the general population paramedics. So that was really interesting to see that. So one of the things that's really interesting is you go, okay, do we need to tell HEMSA paramedics and US Coast Guard rescue swimmers, and do we need to tell these people that they need to do physical activity? Well, sometimes the answer is actually no, because they self-select. Yeah. And they're probably that person by nature before they come through the front door. And the process go through the process they go through, especially, with Coast Guard rescue swimmers as probably one of the more public examples, is that unless you're that person, you're just not going to get through the process anyway. So, and it's seen in a whole bunch of other, high performance teams, whether it be sporting, military, paramilitary, civilian, SAR, whatever. People tend to self-select, but when we looked at the physical activity data for 12 months of monitoring in these helicopter paramedics, I had to recheck it because the volume of time that they spent doing high intensity activity was 4 times the national average, but it's because they self-select. Wow. They're just those types of people, and so sometimes you might go, we'll throw the whole project out because they're going to look after themselves anyway, because that's just the type of person they are, to mean that they're fronted up for the job in the first place. So it's not always the case, of course, but certainly in a large group of our people, we saw that was just part of their lifestyle anyway.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. 4 times? Like 4 times?
Yeah.
The general pop?
Yeah. It was a lot more. So heaps more minutes a day of that high intensity physical activity. So, and again, like you go, oh, that can't be right, but go back, check the data again, it's right. And we tracked them for 12 months. It's not. There's a lot of data points in minutely steps and heart rate for 12 months. So yeah, we were really lucky to be able to see that and unfold in real time. We looked right down into their diet. They did self-reported dietary questionnaires and everything again. Things you expect in there are there. Lots of caffeine, lots of carbohydrates to support their energy requirements, but generally, they're looking pretty good. We looked at all of they're a group of people who's, I think the group that we studied were well into their 40s at the average, and the cardiovascular markers of health, so their cholesterol, their blood pressure, all those things that we tested as well, all normal. So, there's something in this whole exercise thing, Quinny. You're onto something.
You know what? I love it. It is pretty good for you. That's not just a rumor.
No.
Wait. So, question about this one. Now, I was blessed with the U.S. Coast Guard, and I say that because the Coast Guard designed into the rescue swimmer program 2 hours to work out every day. I mean, it's just. By design, they put that in. They knew what they were asking us to do, and they said, you know what, we're going to give you the time to go to the gym, or at least we're going to call it get a workout. Go for a run, go for a swim, go hit the weights, whatever fits your boat. And in all of my time in the Guard, most of the time, they didn't care what we did as long as we did something. And I say that because there were times we would just throw a pack on, we go hike the mountain. And then there are other times it was like, all right, this is a dedicated pool day. we're going to the pool, and you will be in the pool, and we will get 2,000 meters. And it was like, oh,
Yep.
okay, that's a planned schedule. Do you guys get that down there? Do you get dedicated time to work out?
No, and the reason is, and ironically though, there's a gym on each of the bases. People make it work. You know, they might come in an hour early for a shift and do their workout, or they might take time during the shift when it's a bit of a lull in the work, or it's a predicted quiet time, and actually take that opportunity. The primary difficulty is the medical workload that we have. So because there needs to be that ability to respond to a medical emergency within 5 to 7 minutes, getting you off the ground in 5 to 7 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's quick. Holy smoke.
Yes. So the performance indicator that's required during the day is in the air in 10 minutes is the cutoff, but you know, we probably achieve that and well under that most times. And overnight 20 minutes. So we provide a very quick response. So that kind of means you're going to be in that state of readiness most of the time. So SAR jobs, it can be a little bit different, of course, because if it's a complex SAR job and it's a long way offshore, well then of course there'll be a lot more planning go into a response, especially if the person's, you know, stuck but not injured. And then the time criticality is taken down a little bit, but for the medical stuff, that you've got to be in the air quick. So that's not an excuse, if you like, but it's one of the factors that means that in workout time is hard to commit to. So, you know, getting changed, getting out the aircraft and getting going again, or even getting physically from the gym out to the flight line to get going. So it would be a great idea, but again, we studied it, and I think there's opportunity to support people much better from a facility and time point of view. Everyone wants an awesome gym at their workplace, don't they?
Of course they do.
That's it. And so we'd love, you know, a full, you know, the full kit and have everything. The facilities are very good. Certainly in the base I work at, we've got an exceptional facility, but the overarching culture of being fit and ready is definitely there. We do not have the dedicated time, and it'd be a bit of a hard thing to achieve given the response model.
Yeah, I get it. I love the fact that you guys are coming in early though, and or they'd stay late at the end of a shift, because I mean that's what I try to do. You know, if I've got to do a shift, like right now, we've been kind of given some time to work out in the morning. So as a matter of fact, me and all the pilots, the crew members, even the mechanics are showing up. We meet at 5:30 in the morning. We hit an hour, you know, what we call a PT session. And then we beat feet and do our thing for the day. It's a great team building and all that.
Can't believe that's you that's leading that. That's really
stop it.
But
the other,
even in
the
Portugal,
other side
had it go.
oh God. Yeah, Portugal doesn't really count. There's only like 4 people that showed up. Darlington was one of them, though. I'm throwing him a bone.
Yeah, that's it.
I love it. One of the other cool parts about this is like, and these studies are out there as well, is the productivity that you get from people that exercise and take care of themselves actually goes higher than those that are just kind of lazy and don't do it. So
yeah. And look, one of the things that's also interesting, it sounds like you're a bit biased in the way you talk about it, because you and I, we love exercise, love getting out there doing that. But again, that's also linked to why we're here in this job and in this profession. So that it kind of closes itself out there. But one of the things that's really important, especially for paramedics, because we've got all of our staff are experienced paramedics, there's always that risk of PTSD, and we continue to have our staff going out to see really heavy jobs. The helicopter generally only gets sent, not always, but generally gets sent to the vast majority of the really big jobs that are quite confronting and all the rest of it. And the evidence just continues to grow and grow and grow to say that exercise is as good as a pill for those things. Now, it's not the complete solution, but even last week, there's a couple of good papers that came out that say that a regular exercise program that's pretty broad, whether that be weights, whether that be cardiovascular, or a bit of a mix of everything, is as effective as some of the antidepressants that are out there for treating things like depression. And that's huge, because you talk about mindset and how the benefits are just so numerous. The list goes on. For the VO2 max, which is that marker, that scientific marker of cardiovascular fitness, which is what it really means. Every time you increase 1 point of that, you increase your lifespan by, up to a limit. Obviously, you're going to die at some point, but you increase your lifespan by a multitude, far more than a year or so. So there's these big studies out of Europe where they followed people up for 40 years and looked at their cardiovascular fitness. And there's very little things that we do to benefit ourselves, herbal remedies or some essential oils or whatever it might be. None of that stuff's having these kind of translational effects that exercise has for people. And it makes sense. Humans were born to move.
Right. Absolutely.
And if we don't do it, it's unfortunately has some consequences. So we should move. And for employees in this, you need to be at that next level, really. And we've demonstrated that.
Man, that's good stuff. Do you do your I'm going to call it a PT test? Do you do that annually? Is it 6 months, quarterly, or what?
No, they don't re-examine. There's some industrial kind of background. It's really common in a lot of Australian and English services, and in some of the other services around the world when we did our research, that often things aren't re-examined. Now, in our particular service, we do 6 weekly. So 6 weekly, 3 monthly, and then 6 monthly hoist recurrencies and recencies. So there's a reasonable amount of physical activity, again, that's assessed in those exercises. Not heaps, but enough to show that you're capable to do some of that work. And then we have an annual swimming competency as well. So it's not assessed to the same level as the entry standard, but it's assessed to the point where they go, are you capable of performing the job in these scenarios? The water day in particular is a full day of water exercises, including every high line evolutions plus raft evolutions plus hypo strop straight out of the water evolutions as well. So they're not assessed, I guess, to the standard that we demonstrate in the science, but they are at least assessed. But I think, to be honest, I think that most employers would be pretty open to it. But there's this kind of historical industrial union argument that unless you're willing to, provide the facilities for people to meet the standard, then you shouldn't re-examine them. I'm sure you've heard that somewhere before. So it's a challenging thing to overcome. But I think for specialist workforces, it's pretty hard to make an argument that shouldn't be part of people's practice.
Good stuff. Ben, I love it, man. I love all the research that you've done with this and brought it to the table. It's kind of funny. I created my own workout that I do every year now, specifically on my birthday, just to see if I can do it. But it's a run. It's 5 rounds. I do a 200-meter run and then 7 clusters. And a cluster is a clean from the ground front squat into a thruster, so press overhead. I do it's 95 pounds, whatever that is. That's what, 10, 20, 30, 40 kilos, give or take. And then 5 ring muscle ups. And a lot of people can't do a muscle up, so that's cool. But then I would tell them, hey, do a pull up and do a dip, like on a box for the rings or something. So the reason I picked all these exercises, from the running to the clusters to the ring muscle up, is kind of based on any movement that you might have in a real rescue. And that's, your running could be hiking. It doesn't have to be a run. I just do it for the cardiovascular side. The cluster, that deadlift, clean thruster overhead movement with 95 pounds is all a movement you might have to do. And then the ring muscle up is that pull up and then the dip. And, it's just, it's something I like. I threw it together and I do it every year now, just to see if I can do it.
Fantastic. I have no doubt that you can. But it's great. It's a self-assessment. It's logical, and it's based on your experience. So I think it's a great idea. And hold yourself accountable, don't you?
I do every year. Yeah. So far, I'm doing all right.
Good job.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks. No, you, good job, buddy. Come on, man. You've done a lot of research to get all this stuff in. So I'll tell you what, Ben,
It's been great.
I've taken a ton of your time. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. This is what you passed in your roast, and I'm so glad that everybody else gets to hear it. If anybody's got any questions, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yep. You just hit Ben Meadley, Meadley on Google, and it'll take you to a website where you can touch base. So that's the easiest way to get in touch.
Sweet. And then, like any other research that you have coming up, man, let me know. I'd love to be part of it. And
For sure. Yeah, we're looking at a whole range of things. We're going to potentially work with a couple of manufacturers to have a look at, the drag and the weight and the comfort of harnesses through the activity of either, being hoisted whilst you're swimming, whilst you're walking. We want to have a bit of a look at thermal. What's the response? What do you need? I often laugh and look at you see the Coast Guard rescue swimmers in the hotter areas of America in a shorty wetsuit, spring suit. Just unheard of in Australia, which would be in the southern parts of Australia anyway. So, what's the most appropriate thermal thing for us to do? So we've got these like temperature capsules you can swallow. So you swallow them and it monitors your central temperature. We remotely monitor the temperature whilst the capsule's in your stomach, whilst we're monitoring your temperature, get you to do some physical activity whilst you've got a dry suit on or a wetsuit or a spring suit or whatever it is. So, we're looking at some cool stuff.
Crazy.
Yeah. Lots to do. Got to have something to present at the next Rescue Swimmer Conference.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you in Ireland then, and I look forward to hearing about it.
Fantastic.
Cool. Ben, I can't thank you enough, man, for the stories, the insight, the information. It's awesome. I dig it. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And the next time I get down to Australia, I'm calling you. I'm going to go right up and down the entire coast. All right. East coast of Australia to hit all of you guys. All right.
Love it. Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Nice.
Right on. In that case, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real Rescue Podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResq.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResq. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.